let's welcome our guest. We have with us Mark Merowitz, who is professor at State University of New York Maritime College. He is an expert in geopolitics and international affairs with special focus on U.S. foreign policy, the Middle East, and global security issues. Thank you, Mark, for the time.
Pleasure.
Trump extended the ceasefire with no expiry date. His own advisors have privately warned him, according to CNN, that removing this expiry eliminates the pressure on Iran to move. How do you read the situation?
I mean, we're not there, and we don't know what the back and forth is, but it's almost, I really analogize this to a chess game, and, everybody's playing their pieces. The Iranians block the strait, the Americans block the strait, then they're going to be having a meeting, then they're not having a meeting. We're actually getting nowhere at the present time. There were plans put forward, a 15-point plan and a 10-point plan, but if you read them together, you see that they have really not much in common in terms of priority. The United States wants the nuclear program and nuclear enrichment in Iran to end. And the Iranians want sanction relief and funds. That's their main thing. So long as that wide gap exists, where is the basis for negotiation? What they should be doing is having teams of people getting together, trying to prepare for the main negotiators being Vance and maybe Kushner and it's Witkoff, but just to have people traveling in and then having meetings. I mean, I really commend the Field Marshal Pakistan, Munir, for getting the road going on mediation and discussion. That's, nothing can be bad about that. But the idea of it is to string along the United States. I mean, somebody was writing, I think at the time, New York Times or Wall Street Journal today, that this is very reminiscent of the negotiations the United States had with Vietnam. It's a settlement of the Vietnam War, if you will. And that took months and months for a very skilled negotiator who was Kissinger. So, just to fly in, fly out.
Even the JCPOA took 18 months back to back.
Absolutely. So I think, and that, if you think about that it's not that long a time, but when we're sitting here and we're thinking in terms of days, minutes, and hours, and we want a development every few minutes that we can talk about, I think they should have teams get together behind closed doors. They should be talking about
should be talking continuously.
And then they should be preparing for the main negotiators to come. And I'm also a corporate lawyer by background, and I don't recall that the business people were sitting there the whole time. They show up at the closing.
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
They make the closing. And that's not happening here. And so I think we're wide apart in where we want to be. And I think also the Iranians have a penchant for stringing things along and pushing things along. And I think also they are living in a dream world where they think they're dealing with President Obama and Secretary of State Kerry, and they're not. They're dealing with something totally different, which is President Trump and his team. And that's a whole other game, a whole other negotiating platform. And they better start thinking more realistically about
that's a very pertinent point that you have raised, because from the Iranian perspective, they think they have dealt with the Republicans, they have dealt with the Democrats, they know the mindset, but here you say that this is a completely different ball game. Are you insinuating Trump being a different person or the Israeli angle involved in this conflict?
There are many elements in this conflict. I would call it some sort of a soup, if you will. The ingredients of which, the main ingredient is Trump and what he decides. He's the president and he's commander-in-chief, and he's the one who's moved this along. You have Israel, you have Europe, and of course you have the Gulf states, you have Pakistan, you have all the different parties playing a role here. And, you don't get a negotiation, and not to be repetitive, by just launching into, well, let's sit down and sign on the dotted line. I mean, you've got to narrow the gap between the parties. As so long as Iran believes that it can maintain and continue a nuclear program, then that is a tremendous fallacy in their thinking.
Right. The White House's reasoning on the paper is that Iran's government is seriously fractured, civilian leadership wanting a deal, IRGC commanders refusing concessions while the blockade remains. Is this an accurate read in your assessment, or is Washington projecting the fracture it wants to see? And either way, is extending a ceasefire because the other side is internally damaged or divided, rather than bringing your terms completely stable at the forefront. What do you say about this assessment of Washington?
Well, I think there are two parts to it. Number one, I do agree with the president's Truth Social post where he says, they're fractured. He wants to give them a chance to, as we say, get their act together and figure out how they want to proceed and who is going to proceed on their behalf. That's part one. That's really important. I think it's clear the regime is definitely divided after the major leadership, the supreme leader, was killed and the other supreme leader disappeared. There looks like there is a battle for control or some sort of a tremendous division in the leadership. But the second part is much more important, and that is once you deal with whoever it is that they pick to work on this thing or do this deal, is that a deal that will hold and that Iran will be bound by and will have to follow? And how do you know that that's the case? And secondly, if you make a deal, supposing with nuclear enrichment or nuclear plans or facilities, how do you know that it's verifiable? What's the credibility that Iran...
Because at the moment there is no access. There is no access to those installations and all. Nobody knows what's going on inside of it.
Well, I would also add that the original deal, the JCPOA, which President Obama negotiated with Iran, had tremendous gaps in terms of verification. You say this now, and that's a very perceptive point. But the fact that when they made the deal, military installations were off the list. There could be no verification in military. This was called possible military dimensions. And furthermore, any verification had to be done where you had to go first to IAEA and make a request for access, and then Iran had 25 days or something to respond to it. I mean, how do you do that? What you need is, which was asked for in the previous deal, which was rejected also by Obama, is anytime, anywhere verification, meaning the IAEA, which, by the way, Rafael Grossi, they're the top of the line, top notch, top flight to do it. They can't do their job if they don't have that, exactly as you pointed out.
Wow. So Vice President Vance was almost there at Joint Base and Air Force 2 was ready. The trip was cancelled within the hour of the Truth Social post, I would say, for Pakistan, which had prepared an entire second round at Islamabad, the second cancellation in 2 weeks. Where do you see Islamabad now? Because he has clearly mentioned Pakistan's two leaders, the Prime Minister, the Field Marshal, in his tweet, yet he and Iran both need this desperately and not listening to them at the same time. Where do you see the mediators going from here?
Well, let me say this. I mean, who Trump listens to, he doesn't listen to anybody, and he makes his own decisions. And, whether you like him or not, I certainly support the president in many things that he's done. He's a game changer for America, no question, in terms of America's foreign policy, but that's possibly another discussion. At the end of the day, tremendous kudos and thanks to Pakistan for pushing forward on this, and I think they should continue doing so. And I don't think, if you don't mind the point, that it doesn't hurt, or it's certainly helpful, that the Field Marshal is the one who recommended the president for the Nobel Prize, which I think the president does deserve, and I think that was a very appropriate recommendation by Field Marshal Munir. So, I mean, I think there are a lot of moving parts here, and a lot of it is all the personalities too. It's Trump's read on the Iranian leaders. Who are they? He's a very good judge of personality and trying to figure out who these people are. And every 5 minutes he sees another one showing up. And by the way, I wanted to not to forget the fact that in my New York Post today headline in the cover, there are pictures of the 8 girls who are going to be hanged in Iran. Besides the torture and the persecution of protesters who are protesting on the street for women's rights, for civil rights. I mean, if this is who you're sitting with, if I may say candidly, if these are your negotiators, who are facilitating this kind of behavior, I don't know if I would feel very comfortable taking their, letting them sign on the dotted line and say, I'm going to do this with the nuclear or whatever. How would you trust somebody? I would say, release the political prisoners. Show that you are legitimate. Show that you are a decent human being. But obviously they're not. So if they're not decent and they're killing thousands of protesters, then they're sitting around having negotiations. I think there's something very, ugly about it, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
and
it's something that is the next level of coercive diplomacy, I would say, where you don't directly shoot the messenger, but you send the signals which are really hostile. You're right in that respect. There is a deeper question here for tonight, that the blockade remains. The Lebanon ceasefire is dying. Well, the military planners, according to Reuters, are getting together in London to discuss the reopening of Hormuz. So the world is in panic. Is this pause enough for the peace?
I want to make a point about, journalism, the news. There used to be a time when you got your newspaper and you read your newspaper and then that was it. You went on the TV, you watched the news, and that was it. Today, with social media, it's 24/7. It's day and night.
It's nonstop.
Right, and so your expectations are so much improved that I want an answer in 2 minutes. I want developments in 1 day, in 5 minutes, in half an hour. It doesn't work like that. Things have to be worked out. And you mentioned about the Lebanon ceasefire, but think about this. All these years, Lebanon and Israel never had a meeting, never had a negotiation.
True.
Now they're starting to talk. Now, is everybody expecting that they're going to sit down and it's going to say, okay, come out of the room. It's all finished. It's fine now. Hezbollah is going to disarm. It's not a problem anymore. Everybody can go home and no problem. Is that what we're expecting? If that's what you're expecting, then I think, you're not being realistic about, this. And again, nothing wrong with the journalists. Love the journalists. They're fantastic. I admire them. But they want a story. They keep pushing forward, and especially with social media, you can go to social media and you can see the latest one I looked, something about Iran, 15 seconds. I mean, no human being can operate this quickly. So, sometimes the chess game moves, I don't want to belittle it as a chess game, but I mean, it moves slowly, where, each
especially where the size of the conflict is this big and so deep and spread over decades, let's put it this way.
Well, I would also add interconnected. All these pieces are interconnected.
Yeah.
I mean, look, if you look at Hormuz, right, and you look at just that part of it, the impacts on the economy and just the fallout, it's not the right word to use in connection with this maybe, but the fallout to the economy in the world, shipping lanes, marketing. I mean, that's something at maritime, you've got ships stuck there. I mean, and oil, and you could make a list of 50,000 things that are resulting from this. That's just on the issue of Hormuz.
Right.
Hormuz is an international strait. By what right does Iran believe, by any stretch of the imagination, that they think that the Strait of Hormuz, international strait, is Iran territorial waters? Well, it isn't, and it's not theirs to decide how they're going to deal with it. That's not fair. Everybody should have the fair transit passage.
Mark Merowitz, thank you so much for your very candid analysis. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. We have with us Dr. Adil Sultan, who is a scholar of strategic studies and international security. Thank you so much, Dr. Adil, for joining us. Tehran's response tonight was not a reluctant acceptance of anything. It was an explicit rejection of the extension's terms by Donald Trump. Speaker Golibov's advisor said it, quote, means nothing. The armed forces spokesman said Iran is 100% ready for aggression. Can you walk our viewers through Tehran's actual strategic calculation? Is this rhetoric for a domestic audience while quietly accepting the pause? Or is Iran seriously preparing for the collapse of the extension?
Thank you for having me. It's an ongoing brinkmanship between the two countries. Of course, President Trump is also using this opportunity to assert his interest, and he's demanding Iran that they remove the blockade and open the Hormuz. And likewise, Iranians also feel that this is the opportunity to bring some discipline in Trump's behavior. So they are using this opportunity. So it's not about a complete breakdown of the talks, but this opportunity, I think both at this moment, they have political compulsions, domestic political compulsions as well, but at the same time, there are strategic objectives. So I think this will go on for some time now.
Speaker Ghalibaf said in his words, and I quote here, Iran has prepared new cards for the battlefield. Your read on what that phrase means operationally, is this the resolution being passed in their assembly on the Hormuz closure? Is this proxy escalation in Iraq and Yemen? Is this Hezbollah in Lebanon, or is it something we have not yet seen? Is it bluffing, or Tehran actually telling Washington that it has capability to reopen the war?
I think both sides are indulging in that kind of behavior. President Trump has also indicated that he's going to bomb every power plant in Iran and the facilities. And likewise, Iranians are also using such threats to shape or influence President Trump's behavior. But I don't think so. Both sides are going to take any extreme action and indulge in military conflict once again. There could be some skirmishes, but both sides have found out the futility of using military option to achieve their political objective. So there is an intent on both sides to engage and resolve this issue as far as possible. But for now, I think it's difficult for them to climb down from the rhetoric and the positions that they have taken because of domestic compulsions, and also because the other allies are also looking at their behavior.
It looks there are three scenarios possible. There can be a negotiated deal, war resumes, or a slow strangulation of Iran. Which do you assess as most likely? And in each scenario, what is the role of Pakistan as a mediator? Trump today named by title on Truth Social as the reason that the ceasefire was extended is Pakistan.
So first about strangulation, if they couldn't strangulate Iran for last 47 years, I think it would be unwise for President Trump to think that they can use these sanctions or blockade to stifle the Iranian leadership. Coming to Pakistan's role, I think we did what we could do best, and we tried despite all the odds. We were dealing with two asymmetric powers, which were not ready to talk to each other. And there was a past history of mistrust. Pakistan tried to bridge that mistrust. They brought these two countries on a table, which was very rare, commendable as well.
Yeah.
Beyond that, Pakistan probably cannot do anything because we cannot be a guarantor to any outcome of the deal. The other countries have to join in this process. Pakistan could do as much as possible as a facilitator and partially as a mediator, but we cannot dictate the United States and we cannot dictate Iran as well. So that's our limitations. I think now where we are, the other countries need to join Pakistan. These two countries, that there's no other option than diplomatic route that they have to take to resolve these issues.
Right. There is a deeper question here. If Iran keeps the Hormuz closed and the blockade has not lifted by U.S., the world oil prices cross $120. The American midterm obviously became catastrophic for the Trump administration, and the Gulf states suffer economic damage, not hide from their populations. Is Tehran now the party that holds the escalation dominance in this pause? And does Washington even cares about it?
Washington does definitely care about it because there's lots of pressure internally within the United States. People are not happy about this war. This is not something which was sanctioned by Congress. Many people call it as an illegal war. So they're not happy. Likewise, the main U.S. partners, the European Union and the Gulf countries, they are extremely unhappy because they are bearing the brunt of this conflict. They were not party to this conflict between Iran, United States, and Israel. But the major impact, negative impact, is on these countries. So they are not happy. So the United States finds itself being isolated if it continues to pursue its objective that it wants to subjugate Iran or achieve some of its political objectives through military means. Iran has demonstrated that it is not going to
Possible.
relent.
Yeah.
It's quite a difficult situation for President Trump and United States.
Dr. Adil Sultan, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure having you on our show. Mr. Ahmed Bilal Sufi, you are the expert here, but I believe the Indus Waters Treaty has no exit clause, maybe Article 12. It requires consent to terminate it. So when India declares it in abeyance, is that a legal act or a political fiction? And if the world lets it stand, what stops any upstream state anywhere from doing the same tomorrow?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, the act of holding in abeyance is extraneous to the treaty. As you rightly observed, this treaty is of indefinite duration. It is intended to last indefinitely till such time both the sides agree to amend it for any reason that they may negotiate separately, and for that a separate standalone treaty with a nomenclature of protocol will be signed, and that will then become part and parcel of that. Now, holding in abeyance is neither a provision in the treaty, neither is a term under international law of treaties, which is documented in the Vienna Convention on Treaties. There the words are suspension or termination with very specific legal implications. India has somehow used the term to create ambiguity, and that ambiguity is not helping India at all. Rather, it is documenting irresponsible behavior of India, that a treaty of such significance, which divides a boundary, which is linked to a boundary of water, and which is so significant in its nature, it has strategic implication, and just simply sidelining it by a political narrative of holding it abeyance is not being recognized by any international community members or international organizations. Even the World Bank is of the considered opinion that it can't be held in abeyance. So I think India is creating a problem for itself. And if it is using Pahalgam as a correlation, as a cause of action, that too is absolutely misplaced, because you have to first attribute an act of terrorism to a certain state. Attribution is a very formal legal process under the ILC articles on state responsibility, which is the International Law Commission formulation on when would you attribute a wrongful act to the state. That wrongfulness attribution has not been done by India, neither through investigation nor through proof, and global community recognizes that. So therefore, there is no basis to argue that Pakistan should be put to any kind of countermeasures of punishment based on suspension or holding in abeyance.
Mr. Ahmed Bilal Sufi, if we strip away the rhetoric, what can India actually do to the water reaching Pakistan? Is this a threat Delhi can operationalize now, or an announcement of intent to build over the next decade the infrastructure that would finally give it a weapon it has never had?
Well, actually, I'm afraid I have to give a legal opinion here that the threat is building up. India has freed its arms to undertake gradually construction of various projects and various dams and pondages upwards in its area with the clear intent, that intent is ascertainable from the statements of their political representatives and officials, that we intend to squeeze water on Pakistan. And that is where the threat lies. Now, going up to that threat point is going to be a very dangerous development. We hope that Indians realize the fact that there is no point in fighting with Pakistan at this point in time. And they also begin to appreciate that the war which they had inflicted on us in May, apart from the military successes that General Shamsher talked about, I see it a very serious violation of international law. you do not inflict war, an unlawful war, without authorization from an international body. You undertake an attack, you take out civilians on the pretext that you are attacking hideouts of terrorists who have allegedly done some acts of terrorism years ago. Years have passed, and there is no imminent aspect of the threat that you could justify. So it is completely unlawful war that was inflicted. Pakistan is entitled to reparations from India on that basis alone. I'm doing an article as an international law person on the current situation in the Middle East as to who is entitled to pay reparations. And clearly, the international law precedents, whether it's a Ukraine register of damages set up in by European Council, or it is the instance of Nicaragua, or it is any other instance where Iraq was asked to pay damages, I believe the damages, Pakistan may want to look at that aspect not only in the context of war, but also in the context of holding in abeyance the Indus Water Treaty, because that too constitutes a wrongful act. So there are two wrongful acts under international law. One, holding in abeyance, and second is the inflicting of an unlawful war and attack on Pakistan.
And is Pakistan going to raise these issues on the international forums?
I believe Pakistan should. Some of these issues have been raised, and we have a very good legal basis, legal formulations, because international law precedents help us. The state practice is helpful to Pakistan's position. Not even a single country has endorsed India holding in abeyance of the treaty. Not even a single country has welcomed it. Not even a single country has appreciated the attack on Pakistan. On the contrary, all the capitals have been forewarning India to behave in a manner that a responsible state ought to behave. And one basic element of responsible statehood is upholding international treaties. If you are not capable of holding what you agree and promise, then you are not a responsible state at all.
General Samriz, I'm looking at a lot of similarities between Netanyahu's doctrine and Modi's doctrine. Do you think this region has yet to manage what Middle East is trying to manage in terms of Israel? Do we still have to go a long way to counter this Modi doctrine?
Ma'am, Prime Minister Modi had a typical pattern that they would carry out an operation, carry out a false flag operation, or even in the absence of any operation, they would just claim that they have carried out surgical strikes or those kind of things, and based on that, alleging Pakistan and going for escalation with Pakistan. So, in my view, right now, Modi felt emboldened because of strategic partnership that India had with the US. But the kind of embarrassment that Modi faced through Pakistan in May 25, and since then, India particularly has not been able to get out of this crisis. They are really trying to find an opportunity to redeem their honor, recover the prestige that they had lost. But the way President Trump and the US has been treating India, embarrassing them at every account, India has yet to really recover from the shortfalls or inadequacies that they had in the system in order to really go for any other misadventure.
Right. Thank you so much, Major General Retired Samriz Salik and Ahmed Bilal Sufi. Thank you so much for being on tonight. I am Zunaira Azhar. This was Decode.